of shock, of utter disappointment. It's finished at the Vitality Stadium. Bournemouth 4, Leicester City 1, Jerry.
Yeah, you've nailed it. You know, and it's easy to be critical in times like these, and that's obviously not what we want to be. But, you know, I think if you analyse the game and try and break it up into, you know, the 2 or 3 different instances that created this result, then you have to look at missed opportunities in the first half and a rush of blood to the head, one by Kasper and the other one by Soyuncu. And yes, Bournemouth were always going to be a better team in the second half than they were in the first. That was almost a given, that they could not play that bad in the second half as they did in the first. But to then come out and the game to change the way it did so much is, I suppose, the only way you can describe it is like devastating.
They're the words of Jerry Taggart, former Leicester City defender. Alongside him in the studio is Steve Walsh, and joining us via video link is another former Leicester City defender in Chris Powell. Chris, how disappointed will Brendan Rodgers and Leicester City be after that?
Wow, I don't know where to start, because I'll be interested to find out if Kelechi was injured, because they were cruising. So to change it and put Dennis Pratt, who's an attacking midfielder on, whether they were thinking of the game Thursday and giving him a rest. But if he's got a knock, fair enough. But I mean, to capitulate the way they did in the second half from full cruise control, really, in the first half, is really tough to take as a manager, but also as a supporter, because it is a missed opportunity. Jerry's right. I mean, when you're playing these sort of games, if you have any aspirations to be in the top 4, these sort of games, you sort of withstand any sort of pressure early on, especially, and then your game plan takes over. And that's what Leicester do a lot. But today, I mean, it was a real strange first goal. A missed kick from Kasper, which hits Ndidi. He was lucky not to get sent off. And then a straight ball. They turned the back 3 around and asked questions of Bennett, of Evans and Soyuncu. And then, I mean, he lost his head kicking Wilson in the goal. It's frustration because conceded very soon after the penalty. But you've got to keep your head. You know, he's missing now for a massive game. And he's an important player. He's been very, very good. A Rolls Royce of a defender. Now he's missing for Sheffield United, who will ask questions of not only the whole team, but definitely the back 4, back 3. And what a tough and poor day for everyone connected with Leicester City.
Well, Walsh, you feel it, don't you, pretty much as much as any Leicester fan out there. Can you sum up how you're feeling right now?
Well, you know, I am a bit bewildered how that's happened, really. You know, but it certainly was a loss of composure. Naive at times, I'd say, which we have been in certain games this season. Just that lack of, you know, of control, and you know, it was just so annoying because it was there for the taking, and it should have been. You know, it's like Jerry just said. You know, take your chances, then it doesn't happen, and that game viciously turned momentum to Bournemouth's way through a change of tactics, really. But I'd say more naivety on Leicester City's side and sloppiness. You know, it's unusual to see Johnny Evans flustered, and he started to make a few errors, which is very unlike him. Kasper has been outstanding, and then just a rush of blood with that rushed goal kick that was very, very costly in the end. But, you know, I'm not going to point a finger at how you can't do that. These lads have worked very, very hard over this last month, and really, you know, it's a missed opportunity of really that one foot in the Champions League, but now we're looking over our shoulder, and we're looking further down that shoulder than we should be. So yeah, loss of composure and mistakes and errors, too many. But now we've got to do it the hard way.
But that's what Leicester City do, isn't it, Jerry Taggart?
Well, we said it wouldn't be easy, didn't we? And I think it's important that obviously we're all sat here talking about this game, but it's also important that we try and we have to be positive, look forward to Thursday night, which becomes potentially an even bigger game than any other game this season. Forget about Manchester United at the end of the season. This is a potential 6-pointer coming up on Thursday night. And the focus has to be on that. But obviously we're sat here trying to analyse this game. I think the common denominator here is disbelief. How you can have so much control in the first half of a game and then completely lose it in the second. No matter what the changes were by either team, you wouldn't expect the momentum to swing that much in 45 minutes. And that's probably the biggest, thing about this game of football, which we all as ex-players, as pundits, can understand, how the momentum changed that much in 45 minutes to a game of complete control into a game where, like you say, people like Johnny Evans getting flustered, you just don't see it happen. So how it did happen, I'm going to have to delve deep into the memory bank and try and remember. At the minute, I'm a bit lost for words to try and explain it, I'll be honest with you.
Well, Luke Mitchell on Twitter says the worst and most confusing half of football he's ever seen from Leicester City. Now, does that sum up a little bit what happened in that final 45 minutes, Chris?
Yes, it does. I can understand the frustration from the supporters because they've seen this team blossom this year. And regardless of what 11's out, you've got to remember Maddison and Shelley are both out, two quality players. But even so, Leicester have overcome that in other games. But you've got to give credit to Bournemouth, which is, I wouldn't have expected to have said that. Definitely during the first half or at half time. But they made changes, but they made their game plan different. They were playing in front of Leicester and it was easy. All of a sudden, they just ask questions that Leicester don't always get. And they put two up top, they put Brooks in behind the front two, and it just asked questions. And they got their break. It was fortunate, it was a mistake, but they got their break. And then their tails were up. And, for Leicester, it was a real test to see if you could come through that. And they couldn't. It was a real shock to see. And, Jerry's right. The momentum swing was massive. And one thing in football is you can never stop momentum. You don't know, how do you stop momentum of another team? It's very, very hard. And how do you gain it? It's something people have always searched for in football. But Bournemouth had it and Leicester couldn't stop it. It was as simple as that.
I guess, Walshy, picking up on one thing Chris said there, that as poor as Leicester were in that second half, you do have to credit Eddie Howe. He changed things at half-time for Bournemouth, and you've got to credit the way Bournemouth came out and played in that second half. Yeah,
of course you do. But when you give mistakes away as bad as they were howling mistakes, really, when you look back and play them back. And it was a catalogue of errors that have coincided with a change in tactics from Bournemouth. And for me, as an ex-player and in a game, I would have expected Bournemouth to come and try something like that. They had to. It was simple. They had to go a little bit longer, and we've just not really understood and dealt with it properly. So now, it's a massive blow to the confidence. Before we play Sheffield United, it's the last thing we needed. But we've got to be positive and we've got to dust ourselves down and we've got to somehow now, just get focused and forget about everybody else. Just get back to the game and the football that we know and the style of football and the shape that works best.
Don't know if you've got a cough there, Walsh. Are you about to burst into tears at any point after that Leicester City performance? We can take a look, though, how it's left the league table, of course, Jerry. We know Leicester's still in that top four. It's Manchester United, though, who play tomorrow. They've got Southampton at home that have the game in hand. Or are these the next three fixtures, rather? So, well, there you go. I mean, Manchester United's game against Southampton now tomorrow takes on increased significance, doesn't it, from a Leicester point of view?
Well, you'd have to think that, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is sitting there rubbing his hands thinking, I didn't see that coming. He would have firmly believed that the pressure would have been back on Manchester United to go out and win. And which it is, of course. They're still under a massive amount of pressure to win that game, but it's just a little bit come off the top of his shoulder. He's got to be rubbing his hands thinking, there's a glimmer of hope there. They can overtake Leicester with a win tomorrow. And also, so it just makes this game on Thursday night even more bigger than it already was. It was already a massive game, but it just makes it that bit bigger. Obviously depending on the result tomorrow night with Manchester United and Southampton, but now it's not in their own hands.
I think we're going to have to win 2 out of these 3 games, aren't we? Which is now become a big ask. So, the pressure's firmly back on Leicester now and not the other teams really, because...
But you look at it though, Walsh, and we can see the next 3 games that Leicester have. Technically, things are still in Leicester's hands. If Leicester win those 3 games, they'll be playing Champions League football next season.
Absolutely, yeah. And you know what? If we win 2 of them, I think it still could be the case. But it's just added a lot more pressure, and we've got to, like I say, it's just getting up from a big defeat like that is difficult, as players, because how it is. It's just, I was the same, for a few games after that, you're depressed for the weekend when you've lost and things like this. But lifting them players, I'm sure Brendan will, he's certainly got a great management, man management skills that will help, especially for these young lads. But there was a lot of naivety in our play and in certain games in this season, and you wonder sometimes. It's just, obviously these younger lads are growing in experience, and it can be difficult to keep them going and keep the right mental attitude towards it. And Leicester haven't showed any slight signs of kind of sloppiness in all the players. And in that last 20 minutes, half an hour, it's certainly just very unlike us. And like I said, to see Johnny Evans just making 1 or 2 a little casual pass from a throw-in the corner from Fuchs, then the header, the flicked header, with him being cut out where they should have scored. So and he's been the player of the season for me, Johnny Evans. So again, we're not going to lay the blame with anyone. I think it's a time for that spirit and togetherness to go. I mean, it certainly opened a door for everybody else, but it's still firmly in our hands.
Well, it absolutely is, and you look at it, Jerry, Leicester City are 4th in the Premier League, and it's this group of players and this manager that have got Leicester to 4th in the Premier League. So you have to have faith that as a group they can turn this around now, and going into the final 3 games, keep their place in that top 4.
Yeah, they're still well in the hunt. There's no question of that. Obviously, this evening has been a setback, not just because they lost, but in the manner that they lost. It doesn't sit well with anybody. There's no hiding from that fact. But they're still in the hunt. We've seen them come back from defeats in the past and do well. They had a bit of a stuttering start after we came back from lockdown, went out and got 2 great results. And there's no reason why they can't do that again. The focus has to be on staying positive. I'm sure Brendan will as well. I'm sure he'll make sure that the players understand that they have to try and put this game to one side ASAP after they've analysed it, gone through the mistakes, gone through the process that all managers do with their players. After every game, whether it's win, lose or draw, then you put it to one side and you look forward, because without a doubt there's 3 massive games coming up and we all have to get behind the team.
Absolutely, and I think one positive as well Leicester can take, Chris, is is Jamie Vardy, the form of Jamie Vardy, of course. Sorry, we've got Walshy. I think we've just lost Chris Powell, so we'll go to you, Walshy.
Okay.
4 goals in 3 games for Jamie Vardy. He loves scoring in streaks, as I said, in that first half. There's the fact that it's Sheffield United. He's a Sheffield Wednesday boyhood fan. He scored against them at Bramall Lane, and you saw how much that meant to him. So there's positives, of course, going into those final 3 games. One of those being the form of Jamie Vardy.
Of course there is, and like we said about strikers, about finishers, they don't go down without a fight, and once he's getting into them positions now where that goal was typical Jamie Vardy, just like a predator. When we said it before, he just there's a knack in a natural goal scorer, and he is. So what is he on now? 23, is it? 23 goals or 24? So he's looking favourite for that famous boot that we were talking about. But at the minute, we've had a bit of a setback. But he looks back to his, he's chasing everything down. He looks lively. He looks responding. He wants to. You can see he's got that mojo back, which is good timing. And like I say, it was just a catalogue of errors that have compounded us to this result tonight. But when Ake went off, you thought that, hang on, there's not much, not many characters left in that Bournemouth team. Whatever he said at half time, and them 2 substitutions certainly changed the game completely. Stanislas ended up probably man of the match with his second half performance. So again, going back to Vardy, we've just got to hope that we can, he can put one over Sheffield United, like you said. He's a Wednesday man, so it'll be an interesting game now, and a lot of people will be a bit concerned about, because now the form team is Sheffield United, and it becomes a very hard game. But we've said it before, we like to do it the hard way. I'd like to think that is going to be a reality for us, but it's certainly very, very hard work that we're making of it to get over the line.
It's nice to see that you've been able to rejoin us, Chris. I know earlier on you spoke about Sheffield United, how impressed you were with them this season. So how big of a game, and what do you expect from the game on Thursday?
Well, one thing is Sheffield United won't change. We know exactly how they're going to play. They've got a brilliant way of playing. This works well for them against all the sides. But Leicester can take heart from the result at Bramall Lane. If I remember rightly, Jamie scored a goal at the home end, which as a Wednesday night was massive for him. And Harvey Barnes, I think, scored a contender for goal of the season. So they know they can beat them, but they will have to match them, because one thing they will do is ask questions. I mean, if we felt Bournemouth ask questions of Leicester's defence, Sheffield United will, from set plays, from general play, and Leicester really have to stand up to that. But Brendan won't go overboard this evening. I think he'll look at it and say, it's just a real bad day at the office in that second half. What could go wrong did go wrong. It was sloppy, a couple of cheap goals, something which you don't really see from Leicester. So I'm sure he's hoping that it's a one-off and they can get straight back to the way they play. And hopefully if Maddison and Chilwell are available, I don't know if they're long-term, but if they're available, that would help the cause against Sheffield United.
Interesting point that Chris was making there, Jerry, about Brendan Rodgers and how he will be this evening. You always get the sense he's a very calm and collected manager, don't you? But I think also you get the sense that when he needs to read the right act, he will do that. And do you think he's done that tonight at the Vitality Stadium? Or is there a sense that the players must know the performance in the second half just wasn't good enough?
I think there's a time and a place for everything, whether or not either read the right act. Tonight, we can only surmise. Maybe Brendan's thinking, well, hold on a minute. There's no point me, just losing my head with the players when we've got 3 games left of a potentially, fantastic season. So, Brendan, he'll weigh up, the options that are available to him. You don't become a successful manager just by, you know, losing your head when you feel like it. So, you know, he's very composed. I would, well, especially till the press, and I would say he would be pretty much the same when he's in the dressing room with the players. Now, that said, I'm sure that he will let the players know that he is none too happy with the way things went tonight. There's no doubt about that. As I said, there was a few errors that went on that are uncharacteristic of the Leicester players, and so, you know, you have to put your hand up sometimes as a player and admit to, you know, making mistakes. And I'm sure the players, well, it's all about regalvanising, staying together as a strong unit, which they have been for the majority of the season, the whole season. And that's all down to Brendan. So why you would go and try and change that now with 3 games to go, it doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, and he's not going to rant and rave either, Jerry, after the, you know, because that's probably the worst thing that in a position like this.
The players need.
Absolutely. I think he'll be constructive. I think he'll be calm. I think they'll analyse things and they'll talk about the, you know, what's happened. This, you know, at certain parts and certain times of the season, we've all been involved when things go wrong and can go badly wrong. I've been on a hiding of 6 goals and maybe a 7, I think, once. Sheffield Wednesday, I think it was, away, and everything just goes wrong. But it's important. It's how you respond. That's the main thing now. It's how them players pick themselves up, and you know, Brendan's got that know-how and that knowledge. He's not going to fall out with the players. That's the last thing that dressing room needs, is losing, you know, players through, you know, falling out. That will not happen, because whatever happens this season, we've more or less, I'd say, overachieved slightly. When you look at, we've been in nearly in the final of a League Cup nearly. We lost Aston Villa, and obviously the FA Cup we did very, very well. So this season has been a terrific season. It's just coming down to 3 crucial games now, which is a shame, because I feel that it should have been cemented already, with some of the performance where we've just let ourselves down. So yeah, he ain't gonna rant and rave, that's for sure. And I think constructive criticism is what he'll do.
We'll hear from Leicester City goalkeeper Kasper Schmeichel very shortly, but before we do, LCFC Radio's summariser this evening was Dean Hammond. He's given us his thoughts from the Vitality Stadium.
Excellent first half performance by Leicester. Looked really determined, very controlled in possession, good structure to the team, created opportunities. An excellent first half away performance, 1-0 at half time, fully in control. Like I said, an excellent performance. Bournemouth came out second half with a lot of determination, more purpose, more energy and more movement. Caused Leicester problems, and unfortunately a few individual errors gave Bournemouth a way back into the game with a penalty. A crazy couple of minutes with 2 goals and a sending off just really changed the game. And then Bournemouth got their tails up to look like a different team, confident players, and took the 3 points from Leicester. So an excellent first half performance by Leicester, but unfortunately second half Bournemouth came out on top and got the 3 points. But Leicester will be looking for a reaction going into the next game.
Thanks to Dean Hammond there for his thoughts at full time. I did say from Vitality Stadium. I do promise he was there. He's clearly in his car ready to make the trip home. Jerry, I know obviously you've been at games, haven't you? Is it quite strict at full time? Do they kick you out quite soon?
Yeah, well, there's nowhere else to go. You go to your seat, you can go to the toilet, and then that's it. So it's literally, once the game's over, thank you very much, on your way, because there's no press lounge for them to go. Obviously, some of the press will go and do the on-pitch interviews that we're seeing on screen now, but as far as the co-commentators are concerned, because there's no after show after the game, there's, you know, our phone-ins or stuff like that there, then basically when the game's over, thank you and good night.
Well, Chris, Dean emphasised the point about the difference in the performance in the first half to the second half, something again that you've spoken about.
Yeah, I mean, it's a real shock to me how different both halves were, but it's what the game is. It's what we love, and you know, Leicester will look at it and say that, you know, it's a bad day, hasn't happened for us. Keep calm, He's got to look at what system he's going to play, what players are available. I think that's the key now. Sancho's out, suspended. Obviously, Madison, Chilwell, will they be back? Do they come in? Obviously, in my mind, if they're fit, they come in. But tough evening, and one I don't think any of us could see coming. But it was good management, to be honest. Good management by Eddie Howe, and he hasn't shown that recently because his team have been very, very poor. But especially in the running of any season at any level, so many strange things happen. Results happen that you least expect, like this one tonight, and you just can't call many of them because the pressure is on, and it's who can handle it, who gets to spring their step, who wants to do the work, and unfortunately for Leicester, Bournemouth, really wanted it and forced mistakes in many ways, but also Leicester were the architects of a couple of goals as well, so which added to their downfall. So you know what, it's still in Leicester's hands. 3 huge games: Sheffield United, Tottenham away, and then Man U. 3 games that they can definitely win, and it will show everyone their qualities and their mentality if they do that, because they're a young team that are growing, got some brilliant results and performances this year, but unfortunately today wasn't one of them.
Walshy, final thoughts from you before we hear from Kasper Schmeichel. Obviously, again, we've spoken about your disappointment this evening.
Well, of course, I think everybody is. I think just the expectation levels, we all know. But you've got to lift yourself from defeats like this, and you just got to think that how did Southampton feel when they lost to Leicester 9-0, and that okay, it's just been a bad day at the office. We have to focus, refocus, and get ourselves ready, because the games have just come round. Like I say, it's Thursday now. In 3-4 days, you're playing again. So like Chris has just said, we've got 3 games that we can win, and if we do win them, then you've showed you why you're up there, and that's why all season we've been up there consistently. So it's a slip, but we've got to show that that willpower, that mental strength now.
Jerry, I guess one positive you take from these games at the end of the season and what's happened since lockdown, games are coming thick and fast, aren't they? So even after defeats, we said it after the Everton game, after that defeat, that there was a game just around the corner. It's the same again now. Yeah,
and that's why everybody's got to be on the same page, and I think that's where Brendan Rodgers as a manager stands out. Was everybody's got to be on the same page. Yes, it's been a disappointing night at the office, but you have to move on, and you have to move on quickly, and you have to regain that focus quickly, because there's another big game just round the corner, and you have to switch your attention to that game ASAP, because, as we all said, this game on Thursday now becomes another massive game. And I know, Jerry, you've been very impressed this season with Sheffield United and the way they've gone about things in the Premier League. Yeah, I think Chris Wilder should be given manager of the season. I really do. And I know Liverpool haven't won the Premier League haven't won the Premier League, but haven't won a title for 30 years, a league title for 30 years, whatever it is. But when you think about what this guy's achieved, the amount of money he spent, the style of football he plays, and to where he's got to in his first season in the Premier League, I think is, not to give him manager of the season would be a bit of a disappointment as well. Just a breath of fresh air. Finally, from you, Chris, obviously Leicester going into that game with Sheffield United, both you and Jerry have spoken about how impressed you have been with the Blades. How important is that opening 10 or 15 minutes now, particularly with what happened tonight?
Well, it's huge. I mean, Chris Wilder will be looking at this game tonight knowing that's not the true Leicester that they played against earlier on in the season, and what Leicester have done all throughout the season. But they won't change. They'll be ready for it from the first whistle. They play with a real intensity and purpose. That won't change. They'll ask questions of Leicester for 90 minutes. They're quite relentless, and it's a good test. And actually, it might be the sort of game Leicester need, where the focus is really on what they do. So, yeah, hopefully Leicester can be ready and put in a performance to bounce back.
Well, I promised you Kasper Schmeichel, so let's hear from the Leicester captain and goalkeeper from the Vitality Stadium.
But commiserations, is the main frustration that game hadn't been put to bed by half-time when you'd been so dominant in that first half?
Yeah, obviously we had enough chances to kill the game in the first half, but you know the game turns on its head with our own doing, you know, my own doing. So I have to accept responsibility for that. I apologise to the fans. I think we have to look at ourselves very, very carefully.
Is it purely down to individual mistakes, or is there more to it than that?
Yeah, obviously, yeah, the goals change games and situations change games, and we are, like you said, comfortable, and out of nothing they get back into the game and the game gets turned on its head, and the game of margins isn't with us. You know, second goal, it hits my knee, it could go anywhere really. Third goal, deflection, and we're out of the game.
Does the manager need to kind of drill that kind of thing into you post-match, or you know, you guys know what's happened out there? What was the kind of message after that game?
No, obviously we know it's not acceptable, you know, and the manager told us that in no uncertain terms, and he's fully right to do so. And like I say, it's time for us to stand up, be counted, be men, and take responsibility and be accountable. And
now 3 hard games to finish the season, first coming up on Thursday. I guess you're glad that you've got it almost straight away to try and get this one out of your system.
Yeah, massive game, and that's what we're in football for, big games. So yeah, like I say, it's time to stand up and be counted, and yeah, we've got to go again.
Are you glad that you've got tough games to end the season, though, to really test yourself to try and get that Champions League place?
Yeah, I think we have to just take one game at a time, because we can't be looking too far ahead. We have to win the next game, simple as.
A very honest Kasper Schmeichel there, speaking to LCFC TV after the game. It did end in defeat, of course, for Leicester. Bournemouth 4, Leicester City 1. We'll be back again on Thursday for City on the Sofa for the visit of Sheffield United here at King Power Stadium. We'll be on air from 5, so please do join us then. Goodbye.